Hey soccer fans, Nick back with another episode of the Feed the Fire podcast. We are talking about the Chicago Fire's victory over Minnesota United over the weekend. We're going to look at the stats, the lineup, the goals, a little bit of information coming out of the match, some things that maybe you didn't catch while watching the game, and then we also have some signings, some contract extensions to talk about, and we'll get ready for this upcoming weekend's game. I'll probably do a separate episode previewing the match against Columbus, but this at least is going to keep those good vibes going a couple days in here. For those of you that want to get involved with the show, please reach out by email, glasshousesoccer@gmail.com, or you can find me on social media at glasshousesoccer. I want to thank Ryan for reaching out. His email is going to kick off the show today. Great email. It's a short one, but a lot to talk about in it. Ryan says, "What a game. I think that was by far the Fire's best game of the season, and probably my favorite in the past several seasons. They continue to show that they are dangerous on set plays. Zink's goal was a beauty, and even though they didn't score off of their possession in the attacking third, it felt dangerous. If the team can hang on to the final playoff spot, I think they have the league right where they want them, on the road. Maybe we could trade something to Columbus and they could host the games this weekend." That would be nice, Ryan. Good thought. Nick, do you think this game showed Guti's limitations? I felt that this game's success came from Franco. Signed, Ryan. Ryan, thank you so much again for always contributing, being a friend of the show, and keeping the conversation going around the Chicago Fire. To talk about, is this the Fire's best game? From a score result, it may be. The one other game I want to compare it to, their 4-1 victory at Charlotte. To me, these two games are very similar in that you saw the power of the Chicago Fire's attack. You saw the top tier potential that this team brings, what they can do on any given match day from an offensive standpoint. You also saw the defense getting involved in offense in both of those games. Joel Waterman, Dje D'avilla scoring in this most recent one against Minnesota. Charlotte, it was the attackers that get the goals. Bamba Gutierrez with a brace and Zinckernagel. But we saw how well the defense played in that match, just limiting Charlotte to, as I pull up the statistics here, to just 5 shots on goal and only 1 going in. So I think the Charlotte game and the Minnesota game are probably 2 of the best games that the Fire have played. And if you disagree with their on-the-field play, I'll say they're some of the best games from a mental standpoint and a playoff preparation standpoint. Because you have Charlotte, who won 10 in a row, 9 in a row, who is playing absolutely out of their mind until recently. And then you have Minnesota, who was playing in the U.S. Open Cup in the semifinals, and you have them also as one of the top teams in the Western Conference, and the Fire go to their building and beat them there. So right now you have Charlotte, who's sitting in 3rd in the East, clinched a playoff spot. Minnesota sitting in 3rd in the West, clinched a playoff spot, and the Fire have beaten both of them by very, very good scores, complete offense and defensive games. Now, I will say maybe the Minnesota game you take with a grain of salt. Like I mentioned, they were in the U.S. Open Cup semifinals recently. They started a rotated squad, but what I like to see was that the Fire then played to that. They did not play down to the level of some of the bench players on Minnesota. They put a few goals in, and they kept a clean sheet. Another very, very important thing. That's why I'll give that into your column of this was their best game, because they kept a clean sheet in their victory. Also, when Minnesota did start bringing in their subs, Berhalter was able to counter that and match that, and again, keep the clean sheet and keep the pressure offensively. So I think from a mental standpoint, the Fire have to be going into the playoffs saying, we can beat the best teams in the league. As it would stand right now, if the playoffs were to start today, the Fire would be in that play-in game against Columbus. So this weekend's matchup against Columbus might be the play-in game preview for the Eastern Conference. And then if the Fire were to advance out of the play-in game and match up with the number 1 seed, who do they match up with? Philadelphia and Cincinnati are 1 and 2 in the East, and Cincinnati still has the opportunity to win the East. So I don't know if I think I'd rather see them than Philadelphia if I were the Chicago Fire. But it's a 3-game series, and we know the Fire do play well. The only thing that would bother me about playing Philly would be that, lingering memory of that 4-0 loss right when you thought things were going to start rolling for the Fire and they could move up into that 7, maybe 6 spot in the Eastern Conference standings. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. But I think, again, this Minnesota game, that Charlotte game, that's the takeaway. They're going to be able to look back when they start preparing for postseason play. Fingers crossed, don't jinx it, that they get into that play-in game, something they can look at. The other thing you bring up, Ryan, is Gutierrez and Franco. I haven't given too much thought until you sent me this email about, is Franco Gutierrez's replacement? If they are going to transfer Gutierrez in the offseason, get the money that they can for him, he would probably be at his highest point this winter, unless he starts again with the Fire in the 2026 season and just, goes out with, 7 or 8 goals, 4, 5, 6, 7 assists or something like that in the first half of the season, where he's got double-digit goal contributions in the first half of the season, where he's showing improvement there and then can command a higher transfer fee. But if the Fire are going to trigger that purchase option on Franco and keep him here, it may signal the end of Gutierrez because they do play a very similar role. Now, it would be great to say Franco's our starter, Gutierrez is our backup, or Gutierrez is our starter and Franco is our backup, but those two players are good enough to be starting in Major League Soccer and in other leagues around the world as well. So to have one backing up the other might not make a lot of sense. If you want to put your best players on the pitch, you would want to have both of those guys in your starting 11, but then that leaves just a single defensive midfielder, a single pivot out of the back, if you will, either D'Avilla, Pineda, Acosta, or perhaps Odahel. So you've got 4 guys then for one position, and you've got 2 guys for 2 positions, and it hasn't really been the way that we've seen Greg Berhalter play this year. We've seen him play with more of a double pivot, with more of 2 defensive midfielders at a time, whether it's Odahel and Pineda, Acosta and D'Avilla, any combination of those 4 guys in the back there as D-mids. So I do think that we're moving, that this franchise is moving away from Gutierrez. That's a good thing, that they should be looking toward the future, that they're going to be, that it's good, they're going to be in a very good position come the play-in game if they start Franco and bring Gutierrez off the bench, or vice versa. It's going to be great to have another attacking option coming off the bench. But when you're saying that this game show Guti's limitations, he had a really good defensive game against New York City, picked off a lot of passes. I think a lot of people are focused on his defense. And compared to Franco, I haven't seen enough of a sample size of Franco in the MLS to say who's a better defender, but we know that's a weakness in Gutierrez's game. So it wouldn't be a big hurdle for Franco to surpass Gutierrez as far as that goes. Franco also was taking the free kicks. Gutierrez can do the free kicks, can't take the corners, but the fact that Franco probably is a little better at it also shows a little of Gutierrez's limitations, if you will, as you put it in your email, Ryan. So I do think Franco's the future in that midfield. I'd love to find a world where Gutierrez and Franco can be on the pitch at the same time. Does Gutierrez have aspirations to go to Europe? Or is he like a Chris Brady saying, yeah, I want to go to Europe, but I can still develop here in MLS in my hometown and really give back and really drive my value up, with Brady signing an extension and wanting to stay another year here in Chicago? Does Gutierrez have a similar mindset, or does he want to make the jump when he can make the jump? So we'll see how that plays out. I think Franco is, of course, more of a finished product than Gutierrez is, just by virtue of age and experience, but at the same time, for the rest of this season, if Berhalter figures a way out to get them both on the pitch at the same time, and it's going to be fantastic soccer for us to watch. But if he continues to use this 3-man, 3 center back formation, probably not going to see that, and someone is going to have to sacrifice for the sake of the tactics and the formation. Something that was talked about on the broadcast. You go to a 3 center back system, you've still got Gutman and Dean out on the wings, or Barroso and Gasper, when Gasper ever decides, or well, not when he decides, when he's healthy enough to come back. you're only going to have room for that one attacking midfielder. So something also to keep in mind, that if the Fire want that flexibility to go 3 center backs, they're going to sacrifice Gutierrez's playing time for it. But Ryan, thanks for kicking off the show. Let's get into now the actual details of this Minnesota United victory by the Chicago Fire here. They came out in a 3-4-3 formation. I'm not exactly sure that the lineup on MLSsoccer.com is the best way to describe it. They actually have Jonathan Dean and Andrew Gutman listed as the 2 wingers, attacking wingers next to Kuipers, when really they're more of a wing back, and in their defensive shape, they would have a 5-man back line. But anyway, we'll read it for the sake of reading it here. Brady starts in net. 3 center backs from left to right: Sam Rogers, Jack Elliott, and Joel Waterman. And then Jonathan Dean and Andrew Gutman on the right and left wingback positions up and down the field. We see across the midfield Philip Zinckernagel, Dje D'avilla, Andre Franco, Jonathan Bamba, and then Hugo Kuipers striking up top. How did they end up, though? We did see a flurry of subs come in the second half. Gutierrez gets in there, Kwame, Barroso, Marin Haile Selassie as well. What's nice about having a 3-back system like this is there's not as much ground for your center backs to cover, so they can play a little bit longer in each game, and you can use your subs a little bit more judiciously elsewhere on the pitch. What's nice to see D'Avilla being able to go 90 and put in a solid shift. He has been quite the polarizing figure for the Fire this year. He came in, real rough start to the season. A lot of people said he's not going to cut it here, he's not going to hack it here. I probably made similar comments, though I like to think I was a little bit more pragmatic, knowing myself that I would say just give him a season, let's see how he develops and works. And it could be just the fact that he's got to play with guys at a higher level and adjust to it. And he seemed to do that. Took a little bit of a step back in that New York City game, but then came out playing very, very well today. Love the fact that Haile Selassie can come off the bench and still contribute offensively, fresh legs, being an outlet, kind of the poor man's Jonathan Bamba, if you will. I can't think of a better way to say that. That's not exactly how I mean it, but as we have seen Jonathan Bamba be used as that outlet, that fast outlet who can stretch the field and keep defenses honest, keep opposing wingbacks from pushing up the field, Haile Selassie can do that for them off the bench and still take advantage of some scoring opportunities. So I think what we're seeing from the Fire here is how they want to play. The roster is almost the way they want it. It's just a matter of improving the level of play and improving the level of talent on the roster as well, whether that's through internal development or off-season acquisitions. So again, it was a 5-4-1 or a 3-4-3, depending on how you want to look at it. The stats for the match also show how well the Fire played. They had 59% possession. That is one of their higher possessions of the season. 18 shots taken, 9 on goal, 5 blocked. Again, a great offensive output for the Fire. 614 total passes at 88% accuracy. This is one of the Fire's best games. I didn't go back and compare it to that Charlotte game, but just looking at the numbers, I think, Ryan, you might be right that this is their best statistical game at least. They took 5 corners, got 3 crosses off, were called offside once. They had a 2.7 XG, so they actually surpassed their XG, getting some really good opportunities. Again, Waterman with the close-range header, D'Avilla with the close-range header, Waterman with the putback on the corner, and then, of course, Zinckernagel just making defenders look silly and scoring from within, was it just outside the box? Just inside the box. Forget exactly, but again, another high percentage shot. That's what the Fire had been missing. High percentage opportunities. They're finally taking advantage of that, and boom, 3 goals exceeding their XG. That's what they need to continue to do. Chris Brady's credited with 4 saves. Defense has 5 clearances, 9 fouls, and 1 yellow card there. So those are the stats on the game. I also wanted to point this out. I don't know how much you guys like FootMob at all, but Philip Zinckernagel rated the highest of any player in this game with an 8.7, and just because we've mentioned him before, Dje D'avilla with an 8.4, Andre Franco with an 8.1. In fact, the lowest scoring Chicago Fire player in this match, Hugo Kuipers with 6.1. So if Kuipers is your statistically worst player, or however you want to measure the evaluations by FootMob here, I think you're doing pretty well. Because we all know that Kuipers' work rate and how he pressures the defense, how he makes his runs, creating space for other people, and how he's just always in and around the box, always constantly a threat. Those kind of things don't show up in statistical measurements usually. Probably not ever. But he's doing them all the same. So if Kuipers has your worst statistical performance or your worst scoring performance here on the FootMob rankings, I think you're doing really well. So again, the Chicago Fire did a lot of good things here. Again, getting the ball in dangerous areas, high percentage shots, converting on set pieces, letting Zinckernagel work his magic, and locking things down on the back end, staying in a compact defensive shape. You saw in that 3-1 loss to New York City that the defenders were being pulled out of position, that they weren't communicating, they weren't rotating, the midfielders weren't tracking back, and I think that gets a little bit to Ryan's point of, did that expose Gutierrez? Because now, remember, our starting 3 midfielders at the beginning of the season, it was all our homegrowns, Gutierrez, Orhel, and Pineda, who I lauded, who I loved, who I would love to see them stay that 3 and grow and develop throughout the course of the season. Now we've moved away from that in this particular game where they had one of their best games. And it wasn't Guti, Orhel, and Pineda. It was D'Avilla and Franco, and then a combination of maybe Waterman pushing up a little bit, Rogers pushing up a little bit, and those wingbacks pushing up. So does that signal a change in Greg Berhalter's coaching philosophy, roster construction, and player evaluation? Are we going to see Pineda and Orhel be relegated to depth pieces? Or is Gutierrez going to be relegated to depth pieces? Think about this. When Berhalter was the head coach of the U.S. men's national team, and I think this is an apt comparison since we just played Will Trapp in Minnesota, Will Trapp was his starting defensive midfielder for many, many games. Daniel Lovitz was his starting outside back for many, many games. Now, we knew those guys aren't international top quality players, but he had to put them in there while he established his system, focused on other positions and players, and developed some of the guys who eventually took over those positions. Eventually, you didn't have a midfield of Kellen Acosta, Sebastian Legit, and Will Trapp. You had the midfield of McKennie, Musa, and Tyler Adams. So is that what we saw with the Chicago Fire? Can we draw a parallel there where it was Gutierrez, Orhel, and Pineda, and now it's going to be Franco, D'Avilla, and future offseason signing, and then we can transfer those guys, make the money on them, and bring up the next group of academy midfielders to fill in? I mean, is that trend there? Can we make that comparison? What do you guys think? Let me know. Email me, glasshousesoccer@gmail.com, or leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. Let me know what you think about it. Few other things to take away from this match. Joel Waterman gets his first goal with the Chicago Fire. It was the 5th in his regular season career, and his first since July when he was still with Montreal. Dje D'avilla also gets his first goal of the season. Zinckernagel goal was his 27th goal contribution of the season. 14 goals and 13 assists is only 1 goal contribution short of the Fire's single-season record when Nemanja Nikolic scored 24 goals and had 4 assists in 2017. So it looks like Zinckernagel is on his route to arguably the greatest single season by a player in Chicago Fire history. Also, with this win on the road, the Fire tied the club record for most road games won in a single season. They have 8 right now. That's the most since 1999. Now, if you want to argue they had less games back then, maybe we're playing similar opponents more often, whatever you want to talk about, but they will likely, hopefully, probably set the record for most away wins this season with the next victory. In addition, the Fire's 36 goals on the road are the most in a single Fire season. They're the 5th team in league history to have 35 away goals in a season. The record is 44 goals by the Galaxy in 1998. So they would have to bang in 9 more goals over the next several matches, which is possible. And the last bit of stats here and trivia to take away from this game, Greg Berhalter got his 80th regular season win in MLS, and he coached his 200th match in MLS as well. So his career seems to be doing just fine as a domestic coach. Also, a little bit to come out of this. Another headline coming out of this match, Joel Waterman makes team of the match day with fellow defenders Richie Larea and Edier Ocampo of Toronto and Vancouver. No other Chicago Fire made the team of the match day, whether starting or on the bench, which I think is a little disappointing. I would have liked to see Zinckernagel get another nod on the bench there. Let's see, did they put Anders Dreyer in? Because that is going to be the award to watch. Newcomer of the year. Is it Anders Dreyer in San Diego? Is it Philip Zinckernagel for Chicago? I would argue it should be Zinckernagel with everything that he's done for this Fire team. Now, statistically, very similar to Dreyer. I think Dreyer probably is having a better statistical season. But when you come in as the expansion team, you're going to get kind of the crowd love and the press love. But the fact that Zinckernagel took the Fire from where they were to where they are, I think that screams newcomer of the year without a doubt. A little bit of news here before we get into the final segment. The Chicago Fire have signed Jonathan Dean, Jeff Gall, and Chris Mueller to new contracts. So here's the article that came out yesterday afternoon, Monday afternoon, the 22nd. Chicago Fire FC today announced that the club has signed defender Jonathan Dean, goalkeeper Jeff Gall, and winger Chris Mueller to new contracts. Quote, our strategy is to establish a consistent core group of players throughout our squad. All three veteran players have an important role with the club, and we can count on them to deliver again for us next season. End quote, Greg Berhalter. So here is the info on Jonathan Dean. He is 28 years old. He is now under contract with the Fire through 2027 with a club option for 2028. He first joined the Fire way back, it feels like, in 2023 after 3 seasons with USL Championship club Birmingham Legion. 76 appearances, including 71 MLS regular season, 2 Leagues Cup, and 3 Open Cup matches. He was originally drafted 39th in the 2020 Super Draft by Orlando City. Oh, I did not know that. I think this Jonathan Dean signing is fantastic. First of all, the signing, and this isn't me just giving into the cult of Jonathan Dean or pandering to you guys. Like, a lot of people were against it because he was a USL player. They wanted to develop more MLS talent, bring up academy guys, sign people, whatever else it was. But this was a phenomenal signing for a number of reasons. Number one, it shows that the Chicago Fire are tapped into every level of the U.S. soccer pyramid here. They're scouting USL as well as youth ranks, academy ranks internationally, everywhere. So it shows how good their scouting has become. Also, it shows that they can find value. Jonathan Dean is not one of the higher paid players on the team or in the league, and yet is contributing like a starter. And so there's a lot of value in signing a player like that. He's been consistent from all accounts. He's a good locker room guy. He just goes out and does his job each and every week, and hopefully they reward him with a little bit of a bump in salary here and give him the deserved raise that he requires. So big fan of Jonathan Dean as the whole package. You want to look at him specifically as the talent on the field? Yeah, Leo Barroso's the future. That's for sure. Radojevic, that's the future there. Jonathan Dean is not the future for the Chicago Fire, and in all likelihood, if the Fire are winning trophies, he will be more of a substitute off the bench spot starter kind of a guy. But the fact that they have now rewarded him with an extension on the contract, hopefully give him a little raise, shows that they're investing in the players they know who are a good core for the team, like Berhalter said. Now looking at Jeff Gall, he's 32 years old. He is now under contract through 2026 with a club option for 2027. Despite his lengthy career, he only made his first major league start with the Chicago Fire earlier this season. Now, Gall signed with the Fire in January 2023. In the offseason, had spent his whole pro career prior to that over in Sweden. He's actually from Bartlett, Illinois, so he's from the Chicagoland area. Grew up playing for Chicago Sockers as well. So this is a kind of a local signing, if you will. Local guy getting to play for his club, which is fantastic. But Gall, again, this is a core piece, veteran goalkeeper, experienced guy, someone who I think Chris Brady has learned a lot from, someone who, especially when you look at the Chicago Fire goalkeeping pipeline and the talent that's in the academy and on the second team, a guy who can be around for a long time. I don't know if coaching's in his future. Obviously, we all love Zach Thornton, we've seen who he's helped develop over the last several seasons, but this is something to keep in mind too. Congrats to Jeff Gall on his new contract extension. And finally, Chris Mueller, who is 29, is now under contract through 2026 with a club option for 2027. By the way, before we dive into Mueller, listen to those contract extensions. Dean is through 27 with an option for 28, and Gall and Mueller are through 2026 with an option for 27. So they're keeping a core for another year, but giving them flexibility 2 years down the road, 2 and 3 years down the road. So something to keep in mind. You're going to probably see a couple new signings this offseason, but look for a bit of a rebuild, retool in the offseason after next year, or in that 2026 summer window. All right, getting back to Chris Mueller again. Extended through 2026 with an option for 2027. He's been with the Fire since May of 2022, starting in 23 of 24 matches that season. He was recently placed on season-ending injury list after being diagnosed with pericarditis earlier this year. The fact that they have given him this extension, I really think the Fire want to do right by their players, especially a guy like Chris Mueller, who is. It's got to be hard when the doctors say, no, you can't go out and train and play and play this thing that you've been doing your entire life. So I don't think this is just we're going to do Chris a favor here and give him an extension, but they're giving him the opportunity to get back on the pitch and contribute, assuming his treatment for the pericarditis goes well and goes according to plan. So I really like this move. Does give them a little bit of winger depth. He does have a higher salary than a lot, so hopefully he can come back and contribute. But I also think, you saw how good Mueller was with Orlando. Didn't have a very good stint over with Hibernian in Scotland, and then immediately came back to the Fire. You did see him slow down a bit, and I think with a year of non-game rest, and if he's cleared for full workouts this offseason, I think you'll see a renewed, refreshed, and really motivated Chris Mueller come the 2026 season. At least that's what I'm hoping for. Never know how the treatment of these things can go. You never know if there's going to be a bit of a relapse, but hopefully Chris is able to get the treatment that he needs to get back out on the pitch. Again, native of Schaumburg, Illinois, bit of a local guy as well. I don't know if you can see it on my background here. Over here I'm pointing to the Chris Mueller announcement poster where they photoshopped him sitting on the Woodfield Mall water tower there. So great to see Chris get the extension and hopefully get back out there and prove himself on the pitch. So just as a reminder, Fire fans, the next match is this upcoming Saturday, the 27th, here at Soldier Field against the Columbus Crew. The Fire are going to need a point. They are going to need a point in order to keep ahead of New York Red Bulls. Red Bulls, that's who they're playing against right now. Yes, their opponent is the Crew, but they're playing against the Red Bulls for that last play-in spot. Red Bulls are hosting New York City, so you've got a derby game there, rivalry match. New York City is coming in playing hot. So if we're lucky, New York City wins that one, and then the Red Bulls have to go to Cincinnati and host the Crew. So that is a much more difficult schedule, I think, than the Fire, who, yes, they're playing a very, very good Crew team, who has dropped in the standings a little bit, though. And yes, the Fire do have to go to Miami, but then they finish the season at home to Toronto and at New England. So hopefully those October games, those last two matchups, are 6 points and enough to make sure the Fire stay in a play-in spot, if not anything better. So with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in and listening. Please share the show, share the link, talk about the show. Let's continue to grow it. Let's move this podcast and YouTube channel up the algorithms out there online. Again, you can email me, glasshouseSoccer@gmail.com. Please also support our sponsor, Skira Icelandic Spring Water, which is available at your local 7-Eleven. Thank you so much for listening. Let's go Fire.